Welcome, everybody. On behalf of the Bethel Brotherhood, I want to say I think this is going to be a great opportunity for us tonight. Thank you for joining us. I suspect it will be also very interactive, and in order not to take away any of the time for what you really came for, I'm going to introduce Howard Glazer, who's an old hand at this, and he's going to be our moderator this evening.
Great, thank you very much, Ken, and welcome everybody, and I'm looking forward to a great program tonight. I want to first remind all the attendees tonight that the program will be approximately 60 minutes, and I want to thank Scott Fowler for providing so much of his valuable time to us. Most importantly, we'll conduct the program tonight as follows. Scott will present about 35 minutes worth of slide presentation on his topic, pro sports in Charlotte during the pandemic. This will be followed by a question and answer session with all of you and Scott, which I will moderate. This is most important now. Please, to submit a question, use the chat function in Zoom and send your question privately to me, Howard Glazer. I will then call on you in the order that I receive the questions to ask your question to Scott. Please be sure to unmute yourself when I call you. Thank you for that. I would now like to introduce our esteemed speaker. We are proud and excited to have Scott Fowler as our guest speaker. Scott is a national award-winning sports columnist for the Charlotte Observer. He grew up in Spartanburg, South Carolina, graduated from UNC Chapel Hill in 1987, and worked at two other newspapers before beginning work for the Charlotte Observer in 1994. He originally covered the Carolina Panthers for the Observer before being promoted to sports columnist after Ron Green Sr. retired in 1999. Scott and his wife Elise have 4 children aged 22, 20, 17, and 13, and live in Denver, North Carolina. Scott has written or co-written 8 books and was also the host of a podcast entitled Carruth, which was about the aftermath of former Panther Rae Carruth's crime and the people it left behind. For that effort, Scott was named Sports Illustrated's Podcast of the Year in 2018. Scott will now provide his unique perspective and commentary related to his covering Charlotte's professional sports teams during this pandemic. Please welcome Scott Fowler, everybody.
Hello, thank you. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
I'm sorry I cannot see you guys in person and that we have to do this virtually, so I'm going to try to make it entertaining for you. I know you're giving up some time here, and so let's make it fun. As Howard mentioned, I'm going to show you some pictures, some of my favorite pictures from recent times in Charlotte pro sports, and also in vintage times, I would say. So I think you'll probably recognize some things in here, and then probably some of these you've never seen before. And then after that, we'll do Q&A. But thank you again for having me. I was here before, I think it was in 2013, I think Howard told me, right? And saw y'all in person, and so maybe the next time I do it, we'll do that in person again. But I'm gonna try to share my screen now so we can get started. All right. Can y'all see that? Nod if you're, yeah, okay, good. Okay. So pro sports in Charlotte during the pandemic is what we're talking about tonight, and just kind of pro sports in general, but certainly the last year has been very weird, I know, for everyone in a lot of ways, including in the sports world. So we'll start here. So I've been at the Charlotte Observer a long time. You can see the gray hair right here, and that's all well earned, not just from those 4 children, but from some of the stories that I've had to do over the years. So since 1994, and all these pictures come from the Observer, and I appreciate them letting me into the archives. We often don't let people just kind of freely roam through there. So y'all are special. They gave me permission to show you photos here of various and sundry things. This one is, let me get my little red dot here. So this is Kevin Green, the late Kevin Green. And this picture is a little poignant to me because Kevin died in December at age 58. This picture was taken in 1996 when Kevin and this is Lamar Lathan were known as Salt and Pepper and were Carolina's first great pair of defensive pass rushers. This picture was a long time ago, so you get it, the sacks, right? Footballs, sacks, and this was a picture that ran in the Observer around Christmas Day in there. But yes, poor Kevin Green. Cause of death was never has been published. I'm not sure really what happened, but he died at age 58. And this just tells you what I've already told you. So let's move along. Should you believe anything I say tonight? So I usually show this slide to show that Howard's glowing introduction aside, I'm not always well liked. And here was one of the examples. It was a long time ago. And my favorite part of this slide is right here, the spelling of the word credibility. And this was, fortunately, did not happen, but this was a dispute I had with Kerry Collins, who was the quarterback at the time. I had written something. It had been tape recorded, his words in an interview, but he did not like the way it was presented. And so he got on a radio show and ripped me. And that's okay, because you know what? I sometimes criticize others, and so I have to be able to take it too. This is a long ago time, and one of the ways you know that is you cannot put signs like this in Bank of America Stadium anymore. That is against the rules. But back then it wasn't. You could hang up your own homemade signs, and I'm not even sure if these were the people that did it or if somebody else did, but I've always liked that picture. All right, so the way it was in a pre-pandemic state, this was one of the last sports events I think I covered pre-pandemic. Here I am. This is obviously at Duke. They were playing Florida State at the time. And this is one of the most fun places to cover any event. One of my very favorite places, Cameron Indoor Stadium. Anyone who's been there probably would agree that it's one of the great sporting cathedrals really in America. And now they play in front of an empty gym. It's so weird. Every game you go to now, including the Charlotte Hornets, is like a rec league Saturday morning game, except played in at an incredibly high level. So that's pre-pandemic. Now, a few places have allowed some fans in the last 11 months. This is one. So here's the way it is now at best. This is Bristol Motor Speedway, and was an event that I went to. This is one of the first events I went to during the pandemic. And as you can see, here's, social distancing, and, and they were all mostly wearing masks, and pit crews were in masks. And this is kind of the way Bank of America Stadium has looked. How's the sound, by the way, Natalie? Are you hearing okay? Okay, good. So yes, we've been in this situation for a while. Charlotte Hornets aren't allowing any fans. The Panthers allowed a few thousand. Different places have allowed different, like if you live in Florida, they have allowed more fans. They had 22,000 at the Super Bowl. At other places, they've had zero. Most college basketball games, because they're indoors, have had zero fans if you're not related to a player or something. The Charlotte Hornets aren't allowing fans. Most NBA teams aren't. It's been a strange year, yet they do have sports again. And believe me, that's a relief to someone like me, just to have something somewhere to go to occasionally. So they do have them. They are coming back. I don't really foresee, we'll have maybe talk about this in a question and answer, but I don't really foresee sports back into normalcy until probably 2022. I think we're going to have to suffer through 2021 with crowds sort of like this. Let's talk about the Panthers a little bit. They have played 26 seasons now. I have been fortunate enough to cover them all, sometimes unfortunate enough to cover them all. And so a quick history review. Let's narrow it down to one play, their best play and their worst play of all time. Think about that for a second in your head. What do you think the best Panther play of all time would be? And what would you say was the worst play of all time? Okay, here's my vote. Best play of all time. This is Steve Smith scoring in a playoff game against St. Louis in the 2003 postseason. This to me was the most significant play ever in Panthers history because this was their first Super Bowl run. This was a big upset. They were playing the Rams, and the Rams were, they still had their offense called the greatest show on turf. And this was also sort of although Steve Smith had been a very good player for a while, this was kind of his national breakout game. Steve Smith, I believe, is probably the best Panther player of all time. He would be my vote for number one. And this is the best Panther play of all time. When I say that, I mean playing with the Panthers. Like Reggie White played 1 year for the Panthers and is in the Hall of Fame, but I don't count Reggie White because, he was way past his prime by that time. Steve Smith played 13 years here. Okay, so that's my favorite. That's what I think was the best play ever. I was in the press box watching that in St. Louis that day. Still remember the shock and awe of watching Steve Smith run down the field there. And this one I think was the worst. This is Super Bowl 50. And doesn't that look like Cam Newton probably would recover that fumble? However, he didn't. This play, the Panthers, if you remember at this point, were only down 16-10. It was in the fourth quarter, and this was a third down play. I had to look all this up recently for another reason. That's why it's fresh on my mind. But it was a third down play, so if he recovers that, they were still going to have to punt. However, they were still in the game, in a one-score game. Well, at the last second, he pulls away from that fumble. That guy over there on the right, number 9 something, he doesn't recover it either actually, but he kind of deflects it and the ball goes back this way. And a Bronco recovers it like at the 5 and they immediately score and the game's over. So Cam Newton was a very courageous player here. I'm still not honestly quite sure why he didn't jump on this fumble, except maybe at that point he had just had enough. I mean, he just got battered that whole day. Panthers didn't have a good game plan. Really probably should have won that game. I think they were better talent-wise than Denver, but they messed it up. And that's one of the great regrets of Charlotte Pro Sports. This was their best chance to win a Super Bowl, even better, I think, than that game against New England, where they almost won that one. This one they really should have won. All right, let's move along. This was Ron Rivera. That last play reminded me of a missed opportunity. This is Ron Rivera, the Panthers' former coach, now Washington's coach. And this is at his final press conference. Ron had a good relationship with the media and would occasionally wear T-shirts into his press conferences advertising some charity event or something. So in his last press conference, he unveiled 2 different T-shirts. This was one, missed opportunities, which was sort of a phrase he used all the time. Missed opportunities, Well, we missed some opportunities, which is true in every single day of your life. Like, it was really not saying very much, but this was something Ron, it was such a cliche. He was kind of making fun of himself here. Really nice guy. Loved Ron Rivera. Was sorry to see him go, but it probably was time. Coaches in the NFL kind of wear out their welcome after a while, and he had been here 9 years. Let's see. So some eras have indeed ended in Charlotte. This, of course, is Luke Kuechly. Here's Greg Olson. And Greg Olson will be an announcer this year. He's going to announce for Fox Sports. He'll be not a play-by-play, an analyst. And Luke Kuechly works for the Panthers, but no longer plays for them. He's only like 29 years old. But my guess on why that happened, he's never really gotten super into the reasoning, but he had several concussions earlier. And I think that was part of the reason why Luke left earlier than a lot of people do. Natalie, are you seeing this thing at the very top of my screen? How do I make that go away? There's no way to make it go away? No.
I'm not seeing anything at the top of yours.
Oh, you're not? So
No.
can you read these words like
Yep.
no one? Oh, okay, good. All right. Well, in that case, I'm fine. All right. So here's Cam Newton in a happier moment. Cam doing his Superman pose here against Green Bay when he pretends to pull his shirt off and turn Clark Kent into Superman. No one brought more joy than Cam Newton. That guy was something else. One thing he did here, I know people have mixed feelings about Cam, but one thing he did was he invented basically that giving the footballs away to kids after touchdowns. That had not happened until Cam got here. And they started that in his rookie year, and it has continued even after he's left. So that's, I think, one of the Panthers' coolest traditions. And was Cam Newton, along with the help of his quarterback coach at the time, really figured that one out. And here's a new era just beginning. Here is Matt Rule, Julie Rule, his wife, and their three very adorable kids. They have two little girls and this young fella here named Bryant, who's sometimes a ball boy. But Matt Rule is, I so far like what I see. I mean, I would say I'm cautiously optimistic. He's a smart guy. He understands a lot about football. He's a good coach. Is he a great coach? I don't know. He hasn't had the players yet, honestly, to decide whether he's a great coach or not. I know he's good. He's got a long-term deal here, a lot of power. And so he's going to be here a while. And, their big decision, which I'm sure we'll talk about in the Q&A, I've kind of saved this, in fact, Howard, for the Q&A, is Deshaun Watson and the quarterback decision. I haven't really gotten into that here, but we'll get into it in the Q&A because I know that's a hot topic for a lot of people. So the new era nowadays, this year's Jeremy Chen, one of their very best players at the moment. He's only was a rookie. He is really strong player. And you know what kind of recruit he was for all y'all who sort of follow recruiting? 0 stars. That's how many Jeremy Chen had. You hear about 5-star recruits and 4-star recruits. Jeremy Chen was a 0-star recruit. Barely lucked into a scholarship kind of real late to a Division II school. I think the Southern Illinois Salukis, if I'm remembering that correctly. And then, was a classic late bloomer and a second-round draft pick for the Panthers, and really good defender. He'll play safety this year. He kind of played a hybrid position, but I think this year he'll be a safety and a player that they'll be anchored around for a long time, as well as this guy. This is Brian Burns, their best pass rusher at the moment, and also a very young player that's going to kind of help anchor the defense. He is sacking Drew Brees here, who has been a thorn in the Panthers side for, it seems like decades. But it's only been about 15 years. But Drew Brees is about to retire. But Brian Burns is far from that. He's about 24 years old and one of the new breed of Panthers. This is a guy, a lot of people are going to have that jersey when the stadium comes back, number 53, as well as Jeremy Chen's number 21. If you have to buy a child or a grandchild a present about, a Panther player and you want them to stick around for a while, AKA maybe not Teddy Bridgewater's jersey. Maybe we'll go here with 21, or you maybe go here with 53. Either one of those that's a winner for you. So yes, Hall of Fame that came and went here recently. Kevin Green's in it. Here's a picture of Kevin Green scoring his only touchdown as a Panther. For those of you who were longtime Panther fans, you might remember this game, 1996. Kevin Green ran a fumble back about 70 yards and dove into the end zone. And here's one of my favorite all-time players, Sam Mills, speaking at a press conference at the time. Sam Mills died in 2005. He had cancer, intestinal cancer. But before that was a great Panther player and invented the phrase "keep pounding." So Sam was responsible for sort of organically giving them that motto, "keep pounding." Sam used to say, I remember early on interviewing him and saying, "Well, how would you describe yourself as a player?" And he said, "I'm short, I'm balding, and I can't see very well. Other than that, I'm a pretty decent NFL player." And he was all those things and very self-deprecating and funny too. He didn't get here until he was about 36 years old, and still, what a stud he was for a couple of years. Amazing. Should get into the Hall of Fame one day. I hope he does. Okay, so let's talk for a minute. Let's think not just about the recent, before the Panthers and Hornets arrived. This is a tombstone in Kannapolis, North Carolina. I happen to have this picture around because I went there not long ago. This is not Dale Earnhardt's grave. This is Dale Earnhardt Sr.'s father's grave. That is Ralph Earnhardt's grave. I don't know how big your screens are, but down here in little print, Dan, Randy, and Dale, those were Ralph Earnhardt's sons, Dale being one of them, the famous one. And this is Ralph. Ralph was a driver like at, short tracks, never got famous really, but very talented. And then he handed that down to Dale Earnhardt Sr., who then handed it down to Dale Earnhardt Jr., who's probably, as well known now as his father was. And racing was a big deal here. And racing was a major, one of the major things here in the 1980s, 70s. There was really NASCAR, pro wrestling, as they called it back then, minor league baseball, high school sports, the college sports. But back then, UNC Charlotte did not have a football team. So, there was a lot of people were fans of some of the ACC schools or some of the local schools too. But we had a real gap in Charlotte until about 1988, and that's when the Hornets came. Panthers arrived about 6 or 7 years later, and since then, it's gotten even bigger. There's a Major League Soccer team's going to start here in 2022, playing in the same stadium as the Panthers will, and they don't have Major League Baseball here. They do have a great minor league park, though. So Charlotte there's been a lot of changes even in the 27 years I've been here. Here's a little quiz for you. So we took this picture in 1999. Do you remember Y2K? Some of y'all are old enough, I think, to remember well Y2K. Remember how scared people were about that? Like the world was going to stop because all the computers were going to mess up and all that stuff, Y2K. Well, anyway, just in case that happened, we took a picture of a bunch of well-known Carolina sports figures shortly before that, sort of a, end of the century tribute. So look at that on your screen. If you can identify more than about 3 of those people, I am very impressed with you. This isn't like, they're not all Dale Earnhardt Sr. here in the front, who maybe many of you would know. I'll run through them for you real quick though. But I enjoyed this picture, watching it be taken, having all these people in the same room at the same time. Some of these people, have passed away now, and we have a mixture of ages in this and everything. So this is David Thompson, NC State basketball star David Thompson. Jim Beatty, who is now in his 80s, still hale and hearty, carrying an Olympic torch here. But Jim Beatty broke the indoor 4-minute mile record. He was a great runner, great runner from Charlotte. Dee Cantner lived in Charlotte for quite some time, was a really, really good women's basketball referee who then ended up becoming one of the first NBA referees who was a female. So a trailblazer in that way. George Rogers carrying a Heisman trophy. Look how big that thing is. When he hauled this thing in, I mean, it was in a suit. It had its own suitcase. These things are major. I picked it up. It was, felt like it was picking up a boulder. So this is George Rogers, who looks like he could still carry it easily. Played a great running back for South Carolina around 1980. Dale Earnhardt Sr., probably the most well-known person in all this. This one, for you veterans out there, you old timers, you will know the name. You probably don't recognize him. That's Charlie Choo Choo Justice. Charlie Choo Choo Justice, a famous UNC football player back in just after the war, from 1946 to 99, carrying a football here. Charlie's no longer with us, but he was able to be in this picture. Should have won the Heisman Trophy. Kind of got robbed in one of those 2 years, but Charlie Choo Choo Justice was one of the first really big national stars in the Carolinas. This is Jillian Saroki. She was an Olympic swimmer from Charlotte in 1996 at age 14. So she made the Olympics in kind of an upset. And she was the youngest person by a long shot in this picture, but an Olympic swimmer. This is Junior Johnson. Junior Johnson carrying an enormous NASCAR trophy that he won. He was a legendary moonshiner who became a legendary NASCAR rider. Junior also is no longer with us, but it was nice of him to come to this picture. And this is a little bit more obscure, but this is Frank Selvey. And if anyone's a real college basketball historian, they might know what Frank Selvey did. He played for Furman, and he once scored 100 points in a single college basketball game. 100 points. You can imagine how difficult that is. That record obviously would still stand because I can't remember. They played somebody, it wasn't like playing Little Sisters of the Poor. They were playing somebody in their division. Anyway, that's Frank Selvey. Here's an old time picture for you. That's where Bank of America Stadium was in 1993. I mean, that was the site. You know where it is, but that's what it looked like 28 years ago. That's Jerry Richardson and his son, Mark Richardson, standing in front of, look at this skyline. Look how poor a skyline we had back then compared to what we have now. I mean, pretty good, but my goodness, it's really, a lot of these places sure have grown up. Back then, I think that was called maybe Nations Bank Building. You can see that was probably called Wachovia at the time. Anyway, the stadium was built 3 years later. I like this picture though, because it really gives you the before and after. So then the Panthers arrived, and Kerry Collins was a good enough sport to do this back in 1995, back when you could do things like this. We took the starting quarterback for the Panthers to a kindergarten classroom somewhere in Charlotte, and they're like, sure, yeah, come on in, and we did, and, took him. The theme of this was, the Panthers are young, these kids are young. I'm not sure exactly why we did it, honestly, but I've always thought the picture was kind of funny. But anyway, yeah, so 1995, they came. Kerry Collins was kind of one of their first really big name players. Here's another picture I like. Again, Kerry Collins show. Kerry Collins did several of these, as did Dale Earnhardt. And this is Del Curry. Steph's, back in his playing days, well before he was known as Steph Curry's dad. Here's Del Curry shooting for the Charlotte Hornets. The little girl is Dale Earnhardt's little girl named Taylor, all grown up now. But at that time, he brought her along to this photo shoot in front of what was then called Ericsson Stadium. If you remember Ericsson Stadium, that was the name of it before Bank of America. So here's a little quiz for you. How many games are the Panthers under 500 in 26 years of football? The Panthers are kind of the definition of mediocre. They have been up and down and up and down, and they've never had 2 winning seasons in a row. But they rarely have 2 or 3 losing seasons in a row either. They're usually just kind of back and forth. And after all that, they are 15 games under 500. Patrick Mahomes' jersey number, 15 games under. But I think the future is looking up for them if they can get this quarterback thing solved. Cam Newton and Ron Rivera, back in the early days, they had a pretty successful run here. They were, together for 9 years, made the playoffs 4 times and the Super Bowl once. However, the Panthers have only made the playoffs once in the past 5 years. So it's about time for that to turn around. I just picture this is in Green Bay, the frozen tundra of Green Bay in 2019. That's Kyle Allen walking off after something didn't work out for the Panthers, but a beautiful picture by one of our photographers named Jeff Seiner. This one won an award, and you can kind of see why, right? He looks like he's all alone out there, and man, doesn't this look like 2019? Look how many people are in these stands. I mean, it is shoulder to shoulder to shoulder. When we're going to get back to doing that again, I just don't know. This looks like it was 20 years ago to me now. But in any case, yeah, Lambeau Field, talked about Cameron Indoor Stadium, Lambeau Field. If I was going to list 5 places that I, love to go outside of Charlotte to watch a sporting event, those would be 2 of them, Lambeau and Cameron. We'll talk more about this, but this is Teddy Bridgewater. He played 1 year. He has played 1 year here. He signed for 2 more, but they're certainly flirting with some other options here. So Teddy played pretty well here for the first 3 quarters in most games and not so well in the 4th, and that was the issue. This is LeVar Ball, 1995 team picture for the Panthers. We've highlighted LeVar just so you can see him a little better. Here's Jerry Richardson in black and white. Dom Capers was their first ever coach. Bill Polian, who's now in the Hall of Fame, was their general manager. And LeVar Ball, who never actually played a down here, but was in the team picture, standing back here. He is now, more importantly, known as the father of this guy, who you'd have to say is kind of the new star in Charlotte pro sports at the moment. That's LaMelo Ball. Way better than I thought he would be this early. Still a teenager, really good potential. And the big question when he came into came in as a rookie was, could he shoot or not? Well, it turns out he can shoot pretty well. Here's a 3-pointer that he made, and he's made a lot more shots. His brother, Lonzo Ball, doesn't shoot quite as well as LaMelo, but LaMelo is be an anchor for the Hornets for quite some time. And they also brought in another new player, Gordon Hayward, who's also a strong player, probably their best really player right now, better than LaMelo or anyone else. Also a 10-year veteran. So he's got some miles on him, but he's just a solid all-around player. They tried to actually sign him like 5 or 6 years ago, and now it's finally worked out. He's also a busy guy. He's got 4 young children. I think they're all 7 or under. The last time the Panthers went to the Super Bowl, I won't stay long there because that's a depressing picture, but this is kind of the sort of stuff that happened. This ball got fumbled too. And here's this is this year's Super Bowl. And there's Patrick Mahomes throwing. You do not want to throw a pass from that place if you can help it. That is not ideal quarterback form, but he was chased relentlessly in that game. And that's really why Tampa Bay won that game, is they were the one team that could sort of stop Kansas City. And that's, a thing we forget sometimes is defense does win championships. It's not just the pretty offensive stuff. I put this in just because of Tom Brady. This is 17 years ago. Here's Tom Brady shaking hands with a couple of more obscure Panthers. That's Rodney Peete. That's actually Sam Mills out there on the field as a coach. And here's Tom Brady going 17 years later. Can you believe that? Charlotte has come of age as a sports market. We've had both the good and the bad. Here's a fumble recovery. Here is a little picture of the podcast that Howard mentioned, Carruth. If you have an iPhone, you hit the purple button. If you're not familiar with podcasts, the purple button gets you directly to podcasts. They are free. They are a great source of entertainment. Not just this one. There are millions. Anything you're interested in. Food, politics, sports, daily news, everything. Podcasts are just a huge untapped resource for a lot of people. But Carruth was the one that we put together at the Observer. Charlotte Knights game uptown. Isn't that a beautiful stadium? I'm sure a number of you have probably been in there. This is a better look at what the skyline looks like. Still, this picture probably taken at least a year ago, but yeah, I love that. I love that little stadium. They just put it in such a beautiful spot. This is David Tepper, richest owner in the NFL. He owns not only the Panthers, but also the Charlotte Soccer Club, which is called Charlotte FC, which stands for Football Club. And he's involved. Let's say that. He's very involved. And I think that's good. I enjoy Dave. He speaks his mind. And for a reporter, you can't ask for much more than that. So I'll tell y'all thank you here, much like Ron Rivera told the media thank you at his last t-shirt reveal. And then I'll point out two things before we take questions. One is, here's Thomas Davis. He did this for us once for a photo at the beginning of a season, but the keep pounding message, I think, is a good one, has been a good one for everyone through the pandemic. Honestly, I know many of your families have been affected. It's been a horrible 11 or 12 months, but we're all going to keep pounding. And secondly, please stay safe and vigilant. Even if you've already been vaccinated, please continue to stay safe out there and help others. This I put this up because I don't only write about pro sports. This guy named Jamie Seitz was a friend of mine, a PE teacher at my kid's school, elementary school PE teacher. Those aren't my kids in that picture, any of them, but he also coached high school basketball and golf. And he died of COVID in December at age 51. No underlying conditions that we know of. 51 years old, healthy. So it just, this one, 500,000 people have died. I'm sure many of people on this call know someone probably, in your own family who's gone through this. God forbid, you've lost someone because of this. So many people have. But Jamie's the one I remember through all of this, and just, as I say, I'm not feeling like wearing a mask, so much today, or maybe I can go eat at an outdoors restaurant, but I kind of think of Jamie Seitz when I'm thinking about that. And so with that, let's go to questions. And I do want to thank everyone on this call for everything y'all do to support our community. I know you have a very active group that does a lot of great things for Charlotte and the greater Charlotte area. So I do thank you. And that's one reason I wanted to spend some time with you tonight. So what can I answer for you?
Well, thank you, Scott. That was terrific. Beautiful pictorial history, as well as the present scene of the Charlotte sports scene. I'll encourage everybody to put in some questions in the queue. I've got one that I'm going to ask myself, and I've got one from Matt Sadinsky. I'll let Matt ask in a second. Let's talk about the latest news, Scott, and it really is late news for me. I did some reading today in preparation to talk about this, and that is, it appears the Panthers are straying away from Teddy Bridgewater, and they really have their sights set on Deshaun Watson, the great quarterback of Houston. But what's a little bit disconcerting for me is among all the potential trade and financial aspects of this possible deal, Christian McCaffrey's name keeps coming up as possible, the trade bait of all trade baits to do this deal. I just want your thoughts on that. If you know even a little bit of that background of what's going on with McCaffrey possibly being in that talk.
Sure. And you know what? While I'm thinking of this, I'm going to, Natalie, I should probably stop sharing, right? Because I mean, there's nothing, I don't have any more. So I'm just going to stop sharing so I can see y'all better. There we go.
And I encourage
Um,
everybody to submit questions if you have them, and we'll get them to Scott. Thank you.
Yes. So that's a good question, Howard. McCaffrey is often tossed around as a trade possibility. And that's, I think, in part because, you know, he's their best player, probably, as long as he's not hurt. He is their most well-known player by a long shot. And so when people are nationally guessing at what might take, they say, well, what do the Panthers have? Well, but the problem with trading Christian McCaffrey, and why I'm not even sure Houston honestly would take on that contract, is he's got hugely expensive for a running back. And the Panthers are one of the few teams who are devoting that sort of money to a running back. I honestly think, let's say Houston, right now, Houston's saying, we ain't trading him. Deshaun Watson is ours. We are not trading. But Deshaun Watson is saying, I don't like it here. Trade me. And we've seen this work, you know, especially in the NBA, that works more often, but star players have some power. And so, you know, eventually they may trade him. But I think if they did, more likely the Panthers' assets are this strong core of rookies or second and third year players who are under these very affordable contracts, like Brian Burns, like Jeremy Chen, like Derek Brown. If I'm Houston, I want those guys there. The way you win in the NFL is you have to have a great quarterback, and then you got to get a lot of guys who are playing cheaply on a first contract, because everyone has the same amount of money. It's like everyone would be sort of like, you know, I give everyone $100 and you get to go try to build your best team for $100. Can't go over it, not even by $1. So if you're paying Deshaun Watson $40 million, which is what they're doing, then you have to get some. You got to, and so if they went away from that, then they don't necessarily want to inherit Christian McCaffrey's, you know, $16 million a year salary. So I don't know. I think there's a way that they could keep them both, but if they were to get Deshaun Watson, they would have to give up like 6 things, you know. Maybe 2 or 3 of those players I just mentioned, Bridgewater, because they're going to, you know, Houston then would need a quarterback. And then most hurtful of all, maybe a bunch of first-round draft picks.
Yeah.
That's tough. That's tough. But the thing is, with quarterback, if you have a chance to get a star, it's worth almost any price, in my opinion.
Yeah, thank you. Great answer. I've got a couple of questions for you from Matt Sadinsky. Matt, why don't you unmute and share your thoughts with Scott, please?
Thank you, Howard and Scott. It's interesting, though, just as an aside, is not the question I had planned to ask, but maybe we just need to bring Brady back again. Get Brady,
Yeah.
you know.
There you go. Maybe the Panthers will get their turn when he's 50 years old.
I do want to ask you about the future of pro baseball and soccer in Charlotte, but that's kind of my second question. The real question I have is, we've seen, interesting, that chart or that poster that said fire Scott Fowler, and that's not allowed in the stadium. But when Kaepernick took a knee, that really blew up. You know, is it our athletes employees? Do they belong to the owners? Is that slavery? Doesn't he have a freedom of expression? And then it seems like after George Floyd and Black Lives Matter, Kaepernick has been vindicated, you know, and there's been apologies and it's okay. But now the Mavs won't even play the Star Spangled Banner because they don't want to go there. What do you think? Do you think we're going to see more or less, or, you know, about sports, professional sport athletes as spokesmen in, you know, this whole public domain? And maybe after you talk about that, I do want to hear about soccer.
Okay.
Baseball. Okay.
Yeah, that's a good question. It is a thorny subject because yes, we have come a long way as a country from where Kaepernick kneeling, which by the way wasn't noticed for a couple of weeks, as amazing as that is. But then, basically, I mean, I feel like he probably did get partially blackballed out of the league, at least early. And the Panthers later hired one of the guys who knelt with him, Eric Reed, who came here. And then this past year, there were, I think we usually counted around 7 or 8 Panthers who either knelt or put their hand on someone who was kneeling, showed some sort of support for this. In many sports, we saw this. And yet, for instance, the national women's soccer team all knelt for a while, women's, Megan Rapinoe and some other, some stars that have usually won the Olympics, and they're very high profile. The other day they didn't. They all stood and they said, we always knew we wouldn't protest forever. The time for us now is to put actions behind words. And so some of this has almost gone to that state, I think, where kneeling got these athletes' point across, I guess, to a way. And what you're referring to about Mark Cuban in Dallas and not playing the Star Spangled Banner, is that still going on? I'm not even sure. I thought that they had returned to playing it, but I know they didn't play it for a while. Maybe
I think they did return to play.
They did return. I thought they did too, but
yeah, it was just a couple
they
of games.
definitely did not play it for a while. That's right. Yeah, and someone says in the chat, and I think they're right. Mark Cuban, I think, agreed to play it. But yes, the mayor of, I would say, not just the NBA, but the mayor of all professional athletes, if they were to have an election, is LeBron James. And many athletes follow what LeBron does. Because he is so well spoken. He, talks to Barack Obama a lot and has their, it really, really wants to wade into a whole lot of issues. And so I think that in the way that Kaepernick, also wanted to have that platform, but really didn't because he was no longer playing every week, LeBron does. And so that's who I honestly watch. He's kind of, to me, the weather vane for how many athletes are, protesting versus actions versus, and many athletes do great work. You can argue that some of this, is different people have different opinions. Some people don't think you should ever kneel. Others, obviously Donald Trump made a big issue of that at one point. But that one I think it's never going away. That we'll always have that. And soccer, they've moved it back. Major League Soccer here starts now in 2022. Originally, they would have been playing right now. In fact, their first game, I think, would have maybe been this week. They've moved it back a year, and I'm very interested to see how many people they draw. They will not try to sell out 70,000 people at the beginning. They're going to, hopefully, they would love to sell out the lower bowl and get around 30 in there, or maybe 30, 35. I think they, but their tickets are, probably not as priced as low as some people would hope or think they should be. So it's going to be interesting.
Scott, next question is from Ira Bass. Ira, if you could unmute and ask Scott your question.
Hey, Scott. I've been a little frustrated this year because of the fact that watching our sports teams here, particularly the Hornets and the Canes, has been, we've been caught in a battle between the Fox Sports folks, which is Sinclair, and in my case, I subscribe to YouTube TV. I know Hulu and all the other services are not serving up that to us anymore. Yes. It's, in other words, it's a monopoly. It's AT&T TV or DirecTV, and they're all owned by the same company. It's forced me, and I'm not afraid to admit it here in front of all these people, I've had to go and find clandestine ways of getting these games. And I'm not embarrassed to do that because they put me in this ridiculous position. Do you have any thoughts or any insight into what's going on, because I'll tell you what, I tweet like crazy to the teams, telling them I can't see this, and
Really?
I always
Yeah,
tag
good.
we are.
Yeah.
I always tag We Are Sinclair, which is Sinclair Broadcasting, to all these tweets. And I don't know if it's making any difference or not, but it makes me feel good. Let's put it that way when I'm doing it.
I wonder if, while I'm talking here, if you are on this Zoom call and you also have this problem, I wonder if you would just say so in the chat. Like, I would just be curious as to whatever, we have 36 people here or something, how many are in this situation? I will tell you, I'm in it and I'm super frustrated about it, just like you, Ira. I have Dish Network. Oh, well, Dish Network used to have Fox Sports on it. At one point, I could watch every Hornets game ever. And that was back when I didn't even want to watch the Hornets, Now I do want to watch them, and they're not on anymore. And I know what you mean. I mean, there's these pirated, broadcast and stuff. And, I'm not afraid to say I've occasionally sampled those wares too, because it's ridiculous. I cannot believe, and it also affects, I think, the Atlanta Braves. So it's like a bunch of the Southeast teams, or does it affect the Braves?
It's actually
I think-
all of Fox Sports all across the country, all the regional networks that
All the
Sinclair
regional,
bought.
right. So just like locally here, it's
Right.
mainly Hurricanes, Hornets, and the Braves, but it's
That's it.
it's just ridiculous. I cannot believe it, but I don't have any great insight for you as to when that dispute will be solved. We see these, they call them a carriage dispute. We see these occasionally. I can't believe it's dragged on, but I believe, honestly, in these things, the squeaky wheel does get the grease. So please keep doing that. I think that's, I put it in a column whenever I can work it in. If I could watch the Hornets, I would have loved to have seen, that 3-pointer. The only way I get to see Hornets games normally is, go to them, and most people don't have that option. So,
Yeah.
I would tell you the Hornets and all those teams are very frustrated privately about it as well. They can't control it. It's Sinclair, and it's a mess. It's a mess.
Thank you, guys. We've got 4 Jeffs on the call, so I'm going to ask the Jeff who wants to know about Michael Jordan and David Tepper to unmute and ask your question. Thank you.
There we go. Good. I'm there.
Great, thanks.
At least I'm not a cat.
Hi, Jeff. Hi,
Hi.
Jeff.
Scott, question for you. What are Michael Jordan and David Tepler like when they're off camera? That's part one. And part two, can you please share with us some personal experience you've had with both of them, something that really exemplifies what sort of people they are?
Okay. I would say that both Tepper and Jordan are not unlike the persona that they, exhibit. And Tepper is probably a little, he can tend on a TV interview and stuff to get sort of serious, but he naturally tends more toward funny. He likes to, tease somebody. He doesn't mind you teasing him back. He's sort of that sort of guy, like back and forth. And Jordan's a little bit like that too, but with Jordan, you kind of need to be more like his former teammate or something. I would not tease Michael Jordan as quickly as I would probably tease David Tepper. Michael and I went to, we were at UNC at roughly the same time. He's a couple of years older than me. I only vaguely, got to know him there just a little bit. I would say, did you see The Last Dance? I mean, did you watch any of the Last Dance documentary?
I watched all 10 of them. Absolutely.
Yeah, that was the closest that I've ever seen someone really show the way. That's Jordan. That's the way he is. Super competitive. Even now, a angry loser. If he loses in something, still cares very much about his legacy, would want to be known as the greatest player in the world, and trying real hard as an owner. He's just honestly, he's not hired very well. He's not. Mitch Kupchak, I think, is finally the GM that he needs, and that Mitch has enough clout to say, Michael, we're not going to do that. No, Michael, I know you think it's a good idea to go get Lance Stevenson because you saw him play a couple of good games. That is not a good idea. I think Mitch would have done that if he had been here. He wasn't. They ended up with Lance Stevenson, which was a disaster. Tepper, like Michael, wants to be involved. Tepper, I know, and we've written this, would like to have Deshaun Watson. I really think he would. Now, I don't know, how involved he is, but I just know that he's not afraid to make his opinions known, and the same with Michael. And if you own the team, I think that's all right. Bottom line, I enjoy both of them. I enjoy them way more than I enjoyed, for instance, Jerry Richardson or Bob Johnson, who were, I guess, their predecessors on both, just because those guys had no interest in letting you get to know them. And Michael and Dave Tepper kind of do.
Okay, thank you.
Scott, we're approaching 9. This has been terrific. I have one more question about the Hornets, since we're right in the middle of their season and they're playing really well. When you watch the TV games, I love Dell and Eric Collins. They do a great job announcing. One of their favorite expressions is when the game gets into the fourth quarter, they call that winning time. So fourth quarter is winning time in the NBA. And it seems that the Hornets, against especially the better teams, don't do very well in winning time. What, in your mind, distinguishes the great teams from where the Hornets may be right now, that some of those teams just sort of take over a game in the fourth quarter? What gives them that kind of quality to their play?
Yeah, too often been losing time, hasn't it, for the Hornets in the fourth quarter? Last night was a good example. They stuck around one of the best teams in the NBA for 3 quarters, and
exactly.
Yeah, I think that the NBA is very star driven, and you have to have the best of the best. Always has 1 or 2 stars or superstars. The Hornets have not really had one of those. LaMelo, maybe one day, certainly not now. Larry Johnson, early in his prime, yeah, he was. Alonzo, before they traded him, sort of, yeah. But it's been a long, long time. So you got to have that. Kemba Walker was a guy who won a lot of games here and probably just didn't get enough help. But I think that's part of it, is you just kind of got to get lucky. The Hornets got very unlucky that one year. They went 7-59. They should have gotten the best pick. I mean, they had the odds of getting the best pick, which would have been Anthony Davis. And instead, they got the second pick, which was Michael Kidd-Gilchrist. And the difference in those two, is the difference between like Mount Everest and, some hill in Freedom Park or something. I mean, that was but now they've gotten lucky. So finally, you have to have a little bit of luck, and then you have to have 1 or 2 players develop that you maybe drafted low, like a Devontae Graham or a better version of that, and then you have a chance.
What about Rozier? Do you think he is blossoming into a potential superstar, or is too inconsistent?
No, I don't think his ceiling's quite that good. I think Rozier is a good number 3 option for them. Like Hayward right now is their best player. LaMelo, honestly, is probably their second best. And Rozier, well, maybe Rozier on some nights is their second best, But ideally, that's kind of where you want him to be. He's not going to score 35 all the time like he has. He's had a great run.
Yeah.
But I don't really see him as an all-star type player. He's a great supporting cast guy. That's what you need for Rozier. And that's where the Panthers, like, let's say McCaffrey stays healthy and is here all next year. doesn't matter if they don't have a better offensive line and defensive line. They're just not going to win enough games.
Yeah.
They got to shore up those lines. It's not sexy, but that's where, like, that's how Tampa Bay beat Kansas City. They had a defensive line that just overwhelmed you.
Great point. Anybody else have any questions for Scott before I turn it over to Brian to close out the program? You can unmute yourself and ask, even though I may not have a question in chat for you. Anybody just feel free in the last 15 seconds or so to ask. And if not, I'm going to thank. Somebody have a question?
I do. So
Hi,
Scott,
Peter.
this has been great. Thank you. I think I asked you this last time, 7 years ago. But you had mentioned the Knights and baseball, and it's a great venue. There's been some chatter about Major League Baseball coming to Charlotte for a number of years. We've been here 10 years, and I think I've heard it since day one. What are your thoughts on that ever happening, or anything close to that?
I don't like the odds, I've felt that way. That's probably the answer I gave you 7 or 8 years ago. Of course, the Knights weren't uptown yet, so that was, that we've had that improvement. It's a substantial one. I just don't know. Now, here's what I would say. If MLS comes in here and is a huge success, I think that would really help. MLS is, a young sort of hip demographic. You get a lot of people in their 20s. It's kind of like how people go to a minor league baseball game and they don't really necessarily care about the score so much, as long as you've got, good craft beer and you've got a good seat and you're with your friends. It's fine, right? So that's the MLS crowd a little bit. And baseball would love to have that demographic. And if Charlotte, is perceived as, well, the MLS did great, and the Panthers are back to being good, and maybe the Hornet, then maybe there gets to be some momentum. The other thing is you've got to have, you need a David Tepper type guy who's got billions and just is a huge baseball guy, which he's not, nor is Michael. Even though Michael played it, so I guess you'd say Michael was a little closer to a baseball guy. But I'd love to see it. I know they're on every time there's an expansion list, they're always on it. And
or relocation.
But I don't feel great about it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Peter. Okay, Scott, thank you. I'm going to turn it over to Brian to finish out the evening.
I guess I can't get a question in. I sent you one.
Oh,
Charlotte can be so outstanding for a lot of different things. Temple does a lot of outstanding things, and the ADL is working on anti-hate, and we have a new Reimagining America project, and all things I've worked on. Rabbi Nichols also, cultures of mutual respect and teamwork. And that's not just my concern, is it? And not just the Jewish concern either. It's a Black and Israeli concern, and the need for an expanded Abrahamic brotherhood of friendship. I was on something with Wiesenthal, who was down here at one time with the Jewish Federation. And don't we need to engage, or couldn't we engage with the rest of with some of the sports stars for a different type of teamwork and friendship of the American and human family to repair our world in pain?
Sure.
It's a good brotherhood, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. I think that'd be great.
So we should work together more.
Thank you for
There's
that.
a new project with the former mayor, Jennifer Roberts. I don't know if anyone else is familiar with it. And the Presbyterian, not only local, but national. They're not just Jewish problems, they're human problems. And we could build much better options than the way we're going.
Thank you,
Not only-
Bob.
thank you very much.
Thank you. Brian, do you
Thank
want to
you.
go ahead and
Take-
close us out?
Sure. Scott, the Brotherhood would like to thank you for your touchdown scoring, hitting it out of the park, and sinking the three-pointer presentation this evening. I'm sure everyone has found your program to be interesting, fun, and stimulating. Again, thank you for sharing your program with us this evening.
Thank you.
We'd like to
Thanks,
thank
Matt.
Howard Glazer for moderating tonight's event, and the TBE staff who have coordinated this evening's program. I'd also like to especially thank Natalie Freelander, our Zoom guru. I'd like to invite everyone to join us on April 8th for our Yom HaShoah program and April 28th for our Yiddish Revival program. These programs will be announced at a later date through Punch Bowl and Shul Cloud. For those of you who are not Brotherhood members, I'd like you to consider joining us by going to the Temple website, going to Get Involved, Brotherhood, and sign up. Thank you, everyone, for your interest and attendance at our program tonight. Stay healthy and good night.
Thank you, Scott.